Kelvin, a young man, dies due to a god's mistake, but he is given a chance to be reincarnated into a new world with skills of his choice. However, in exchange for his memories, he must give up everything except his name. After awakening in the new world, Kelvin realizes that he has chosen to be a summoner mage, and the goddess of reincarnation, Morphina, appears as an interactive game menu and serves him. As Kelvin arrives in the town of Parth, he decides to join the Adventurers Guild as a basic mage, while keeping his summoner skill hidden. Morphina informs him that summoners are so rare and powerful that kings and nations would go to war to acquire them. Kelvin takes on a job to slay slime monsters, but instead, he ends up taming one and naming it Clotho, which gives the slime a distinct personality. Morphina reveals to Kelvin that he had made his summoner class rank S, the highest possible, before reincarnating. This makes Kelvin the most powerful living summoner, and as he gains levels, he will become even more potent. Kelvin's skill also gives a significant boost to his summons, and Clotho is now 100 times stronger. Returning to Parth, Kelvin is disturbed to learn that slavery is common in this new world. He rents a room for the night and quickly gets promoted to E rank. D-rank adventurer Cashel, who wants to humiliate Kelvin, suggests that he hunt a monster known as a Black Ghost Knight. But Kelvin, using his appraisal skill, discovers that Cashel is a murderer, and instead of joining him, he proposes a contest. Cashel, Gimel, and Raj plot to murder Kelvin, but Kelvin outwits them. He captures Raj while Clotho evolves into a slime Blatonia, an almost demon lord class monster, and captures Gimel. Kelvin quickly defeats Cashel, who confesses to hunting low-rank adventurers for experience, and they are all arrested. Kelvin finally finds the Black Ghost Knight, who has a personality and a name Gerard. Gerard was once a human knight, but he became a monster after his kingdom, Alcarl, was destroyed by an elf named Gildor. The destruction of Alcarl also resulted in the death of Gerard's wife and daughter, Betty and Connie, causing him to be tied to the world even after death. After a short duel, Gerard remembers his past, and Kelvin supplies a piece of his armor as proof that he completed the job. Combined with Cashel's bounty, Kelvin is promoted directly to B rank. Gerard joins Clotho and Morphina as Kelvin's newest monster. Kelvin meets Guildmaster Leo, who greets him by asking if he came from another world. Leo shows that his appraisal skill is stronger than Kelvin's concealment skill, revealing that Kelvin is a summoner. Leo thanks Kelvin for helping him expose Cashel, a foreign noble and a murderer, and admits that he needed proof of Cashel's crime. Leo also tells Kelvin that other reincarnations have been summoned as the current heroes of the Daramus Empire, to face a demon lord. Leo wants Kelvin to focus on the monsters that have become more powerful due to the demon lord's influence. Kelvin agrees and decides to purchase a female slave to train and add to his team. Kelvin seeks out the slave he saw on his first day, a beautiful half-elf named Ethel, who has not been sold due to a curse that burns those who touch her. Kelvin purchases her and breaks her curse, allowing her to touch people for the first time. Ethel is taken under the wing of Claire, Kelvin's landlady, while Kelvin shows her how to use her skill points. That night, Kelvin is unable to sleep as he has to share his bed with Ethel. She becomes a deadly archer, and gains an affinity for fire due to her previous curse. She also befriends Angie, a guild secretary. One day, Tabura, third prince of Trison, confronts and attempts to grab Angie and Ethel, so Kelvin beats up his guards. Tabura admits he came to Parth to hire a strong adventurer to boost his poor reputation, but Kelvin reveals he is the adventurer and refuses Tabura's offer. Morphina visits the Cathedral of Daramus to impart a prophecy to Oracle Colette, ordering the heroes to deal with a threat in the west, and to stay away from Parth. Ethel tells Kelvin that she has fallen in love with him, but Kelvin resists his desire as she is still a slave, and he feels he would be taking advantage. Morphina informs Kelvin that the four heroes are weaker than she was expecting, and that Kelvin has almost surpassed them. Leo sends Kelvin to deal with a demon sealed in a cave. Kelvin finds two demons, the archdemon Victor, and a demon girl named Sarah, daughter of the most recently defeated demon lord Gustav. Victor hopes by eating Kelvin, he will gain the human ability to break the seal keeping Sarah trapped, and he will then eat Sarah and become the next demon lord. Kelvin begins smiling as he realizes he is facing a powerful opponent, and Morphina and Gerard reveal to Ethel that Kelvin is a total battle junkie. Kelvin and his team face off against Victor, an archdemon who is guarding a demon girl named Sarah in a sealed cave. Victor hopes to gain the human ability to break the seal by eating Kelvin, and then eat Sarah to become the next demon lord. Despite Victor assuming his full demonic form, he is weakened by Clotho draining his magic, and his arms are destroyed by Ethel's arrows and Gerard's sword. Against their teamwork, Victor is still defeated, and a stone pillar almost falls on Sarah, but Victor saves her. However, Victor admits that he was never going to eat Sarah. In reality, Victor once trained and took care of Sarah when she was young, and was assigned to guard her by her father Gustav. Before he was defeated by the hero Gustav, he cast a spell on Sarah sealing her away, so only a human could unseal her, and Victor has guarded her ever since. As his dying request, Victor asks Kelvin to add Sarah to his party, so she can finally see the world. Kelvin agrees, and Victor dies peacefully. Despite the risk she will become the next Demon King, Kelvin frees Sarah and conceals her demon traits. Gerard evolves into an Abyssal Knight Commander, and Kelvin reports to Leo, who promotes him to rank A for defeating Victor. Angie organizes a celebration on Kelvin's promotion, and after everyone passes out drunk, Kelvin finds Sarah mourning for Victor, who was her only childhood companion. She decides to experience the entire world in Victor's memory, in particular, to see the ocean and learn to swim like Victor once promised her. Having tamed Sarah, Kelvin crafts her armor from Victor's armor and also a new sword, Dane's Leaf, for Gerard. Kelvin suddenly develops a powerful hunger for rice, so they all travel to the water kingdom of Torridge, and its capital coastal city, where rice can be found, and Sarah can swim in the ocean. Molfina disappears again, claiming she hopes to possess one of her avatars, and finally appear in the physical world. Gerard privately suspects Molfina is jealous Kelvin has two other ladies in his party. On the journey, they are attacked by the bandit gang Black Wind, who want Sarah and Ethel for the slave trade. Sarah enjoys defeating them before Kelvin interrogates them. Kelvin informs Torridge Guild leader Mist that the Black Wind's secret leader is a famous adventurer from Trison named Christoph, who is secretly involved in the illegal slave trade. For political reasons, they cannot accuse Christoph publicly until Kelvin realizes the four heroes are in town. By his suggestion, Mist formally requests the heroes to look into recent kidnappings by the Black Wind. Kelvin locates and frees slaves captured by Black Wind, before easily defeating Christoph and his lieutenants. The heroes eventually catch up, but believe Christoph is another adventurer sent to free the slaves and find Kelvin and his team pretending to be the true leaders of Black Wind. Kelvin finally meets the heroes, sword wielders Tuya and Satsuna, and mages Nana and Miyabi. To test their skills, Kelvin challenges them to a fight, with the losing side agreeing to obey an order from the winner. Kelvin reveals his new gloves, Skill Eater, which absorb unique skills from others, allowing him to use them. He has already borrowed Sarah's martial combat skill, and now steals parallel processing from Miyabi. Tuya tries to fight alone, but Sasuna slaps him for risking himself and ignoring his teammates. They fight as a team again. Kelvin criticizes their amateur approach, but also gives them tips on how to improve. The heroes trap Kelvin in an anti-magic trap, but he uses parallel processing to invent a new spell and frees himself. Kelvin defeats all four heroes, but when they wake up, he explains that he was the one who rescued the slaves, and Christoph was the true criminal. The heroes thank him and realize that Kelvin fought them to measure their abilities and help them improve. Kelvin reminds them of the agreement, and they strip down to their swimwear. Kelvin takes them to a sea cave to train against a giant octopus. Kelvin notes that the heroes almost lost to the octopus, and stands no chance against a dungeon boss. Sarah locates a dungeon boss dragon, which the heroes decide to fight, impressing Kelvin with their resolve. He gives them a break and defeats the dragon himself. Kelvin gives the heroes enchanted necklaces before they leave. Later, Kelvin is summoned by Tsubaki Fujiwara, the Queen of Torridge. He notices the architecture of her castle and her family name, and realizes that one of her ancestors must have been Japanese. She thanks him for defeating Black Wind and the dragon, and is surprised when Kelvin only requests rice. She rewards him with a lifetime supply of rice, and teaches Ethel Japanese cuisine. Tsubaki attempts to hire Kelvin, but he declines. In part, Kelvin purchases a large house, and hires two of the slaves he freed from Black Wind, Ellie and her daughter Luca, as household servants. Molfina returns with her avatar body, and Kelvin is able to summon her into the physical world for the first time. Kelvin receives a reward from Molfina called Grace of Resurrection, which allows him to summon a hero from Japan, and protects him from any fatal attack once a month. However, Kelvin is hesitant to use this summoning ability, as it would involve forcing someone to come to this world against their will. Molfina explains to Kelvin that the only ones who can kill demon lords are summoned heroes, as their magic is fundamentally different, and suggests that he should only summon people who have already died, so it feels less like kidnap, and more like a second chance. Feeling better, Kelvin decides to use the ability and reincarnate a hero immediately. The hero he summons is a young girl named Ryo, the strongest hero from all of Japan who had been terminally ill in her previous life. Kelvin also decides to give Ryo a new identity as his younger half-sister, and changes her name to Ryon. Kelvin wakes up to find Sarah, Malfina and Ryon all in his bed. He decides that for their safety, Ryon, Ellie and Lucas should level up and uses his XP sharing skill to increase their levels without them having to fight. He also tames a shadow wolf as a pet for Ryon named Alex. Old, another adventurer, joins them in a dungeon with his party to slay monsters for their promotion exam to rank B. Unfortunately, Sarah and Gerard have already slain all the monsters. Guildmaster Leo puts Kelvin forward for a promotion exam to rank S, and over several weeks, Ryon trains until she is a capable fighter. One night, 14 assassins enter Kelvin's land seeking revenge against him for defeating their former leader, Christoph. Kelvin allows Ryon and Alex to fight them as a test, and all the assassins are defeated by Ryon, while Kelvin captures their leader. Meanwhile, the Emperor of Trison is disappointed in Christoph's failure, as his exposure is an international embarrassment to Trison, especially with the kingdoms of Gon, Torridge and Daramis, considering forming an alliance against them. Prince Asgard and General Tristan vote to go to war immediately, while General Dan and Princess Shutola vote to wait for better conditions in which to start a war. The tie-breaking vote is left to General Clive, who is absent due to indulging his hedonistic appetite. Leo informs Kelvin that Trison has been increasing aggression against the Gon kingdom. Coincidentally, he sends Kelvin on his rank S promotion exam, which involves completing a job for Leonhard Gon, the Beast King of Gon. Kelvin must slay a rank S monster to save an elven village. Elven Chief Nelrys initially mistakes Ethel for his own daughter, Lumel, but soon realizes his mistake. Kelvin is curious about Lumel, and Nelrys explains that 20 years ago, Lumel offered herself as a sacrifice to save the village from a dragon. The dragon took her as his wife, but years later, Lumel was found dead, and fearing the dragon's return, the elves fled to Gon. Kelvin suspects that Lumel was Ethel's mother, although the identity of her human father remains unknown, since pregnancy between a dragon and Lumel would be impossible. Nelrys reveals that the rank S monster has been kidnapping elves, so Kelvin erects a stone barrier around the village. Trison soldiers invade with monsters under their command, but they are killed by Ethel using extremely long-range archery magic. However, their commander avoids capture by controlling the Gigant Lord, the rank S monster. Ryon and Alex defeat the Gigant Lord, which transforms into a flaming Gigant furnace. Ryon defeats it again and captures the commander. General Clive appears and almost kills Ethel, but Kelvin saves her. Kelvin realizes that Clive is strong, and his battle junkie instincts start rising. Clive tries to hypnotize Ethel into becoming his love slave, but Kelvin defends her. He realizes that Clive is also a reincarnation with a unique hypnosis skill, which lets him do whatever he wants to anybody for his personal amusement. Angered by Clive's arrogance, Kelvin scars his face, which infuriates Clive. Clive summons a rank S hurricane spell, and Kelvin is forced to use his most powerful magic staff, the rank S Black Disaster. He cuts through Clive's spell and severs both Clive's legs. Clive is rescued by General Tristan, who teleports them both away. The elves celebrate, but Kelvin is disappointed that the fight was a draw. Tristan has Clive imprisoned and puts his own love slaves in charge of torturing him for experimentation, to see if reincarnations have any scientific value. Kelvin decides he must grow his power even further. Nelrys gives Ethel a hair ornament that belonged to Lumel. An elven girl reveals that she is actually a disguised Leonhard Gon, and confirms that Kelvin is now promoted to S rank. He also reveals that there will be an official promotion ceremony that will include a mock battle against existing S-rank adventurers. Everyone is exasperated when the idea of fighting other S-rank warriors ignites Kelvin's battle junkie instincts again.